Hey guys, today I've got the longest video I have ever made, because I'm a huge fan of the long form videos of Abroad Favorites, Hobby Alcoholic, Toilet Connoisseur and Film Goat Jason from Grainy Days. And that is why I wanted to make one myself. During my annual vacation I visited what is probably the most beautiful city in all of Europe, Amsterdam. You have no idea how long I've been wanting to visit this city. Together with my new trusty companion, the most overhyped and underrated camera of the decade, the Fujifilm X100VI. Come there. Yeah, really, I've bought one. In 5 days I managed to explore almost everything Amsterdam has to offer. Plus I also made a brief visit to Utrecht, Düsseldorf, Münster and the North Sea. In this video we explore the famous city center, go on a boat tour, visit the Rijksmuseum, the Botanical Garden and a rooftop terrace from Amsterdam's biggest museum. And my favorite, we visit a town that looks like a Disney-fied version of the Netherlands. And of course I photographed everything interesting along the way. I will share the tips and tricks I learned about Amsterdam, and after each day I give you my best advices on mastering the X100VI for street photography. Because trust me, it is not as simple as it looks. And after about 10,000 photos with this camera, I think I've mastered it.
It's over 9,000!
This camera is in fact one of the best and the worst cameras I've ever used. And I show you how to work around of all of its weaknesses. This trip actually meant to be a slow and relaxing vacation for me and my wife this year, but I couldn't resist documenting it all. But please, don't expect a cinematographic masterpiece. And my wife only has one rule for this whole vacation.
Motherfucker, don't ever fucking film me, I'm gonna kick the shit out of you!
So let's start and kick off our journey. And this episode is sponsored by my new preset, the Big Negative preset for Fujifilm Volume 2. So check out the description if you like the grading of the images. So let's start our journey. I'm really looking forward to it. After a casual 4-hour drive we arrived in one of Germany's largest cities, Düsseldorf. Düsseldorf and Köln have a secret rivalry over their local beer, Altbier versus Kölsch. It doesn't get more German than that. The plan for today is just to simply go into the heart of the city and let the city atmosphere sink in. But before we explore the city center, we check out the hotel room in a business hotel. Meh, railway tracks. On the other side, of course, is a park. Yeah. Unfortunately, no vintage bathroom and just a regular toilet. Sorry, Jason.
I think I like my toilets looking a little more rough around the edges.
Enough with the toilets, let's head outside. On our way, we stumbled upon the Small Park Festival, a great place to warm up with a few shots. A few minutes later we arrived at the Schauspielhaus, one of Düsseldorf's most interesting places. For anyone wondering what's inside the oversized hatch over there, it's just a regular department store with an H&M and other boring stores. As you probably noticed, I enjoy mixing architecture, minimalism and street photography equally. This green lookout corner has a Aldi underneath, and it turns out to be a street photography easy mode location. Everywhere people are bustling, standing and sitting, perfect for layering. We continue towards the city center. Düsseldorf is large and we want to see more. These two are obviously waiting for their wives. The city center mostly consists of these pedestrian streets, so let's keep going. I found the construction site cool because of the structure and high amount of beige. Apparently other people thought so too. Here we are in a closed market. Will we find anything interesting here? Yeah, at least one shot. The high number of people here seems pretty normal, as it looks. Someone even volunteered to be a moving soccer goal. And now we arrived at the Rhine Promenade. Here are a lot of typical German bars where you can get beer, 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 beer and beer. Oh, another photographer. That day we also encountered many bachelor parties. Later we meet a wedding party as well. And we are at the wedding. It was truly a beautiful sunset atmosphere here by the Rhine. If I lived here, I'd probably come here every day. The local seems to be having a lot of fun here. I don't know which city planner was drunk and approved a narrow tower that's twice as tall as the other buildings here, but okay. We will be eating here in a minute. Highly recommended. They have vegan burgers that are so good that they don't even mention that they're vegan, since hardly anyone would even notice. And these burgers were so tasty. But now it's time to head back to the hotel. The next day we are off to Amsterdam bright and early. Here's an antique decoration from better times. We had to stop here by the pond for a moment because these geese were watching us very curiously. That was a relaxing end of the day. Let's begin with the basics for this camera. Before you go on your own journey with your X100, here are my most important tips for better ergonomics, more usability and to make this camera travel ready in the first place. The ergonomics out of the box is not as good. It's like a bar of soap and you will probably drop it. So the best thing is to buy a hand grip, which I had but I sold, because I am one of the few people who prefer a thumb rest for this camera. The thumb rest is small and doesn't increase the weight too much. The next thing is, I always shoot with my thumb and I need a better pressure point because this is a bit too mushy for me. To get a bit more surface area and a better pressure point, I recommend a shutter release button. You can screw on, second try, on your camera. This makes it more comfortable. And I can hold this camera like this the whole day. To the battery which is already in the camera, you need at least 2 extra spare batteries for a whole day of shooting. The camera startup time can be sometimes too long for the fast-paced things that happened on the street, so it's recommended to leave this camera on. And that's why you need at least 2 of them. One really important thing is to get a front filter for this camera. This camera is not water and dust proof until you screw on a filter. The reason for that is that the front element comes out when it's focusing. So debris, dust, water can get inside this little crevice here and probably destroy your whole focus system when you don't have a filter. This is a major design flaw of this lens, but maybe in the next camera it will be fixed. And while we're on it, this lens is very sensitive to light from the front or on the side, so you definitely need a lens hood to at least reduce the haze that comes from the side. These are my basic tips for traveling with this camera. If you have other suggestions, then please leave it in the comments. And I think we move on with the next day. Finally, on day 2, we arrived in the city of all cities, Amsterdam. My plan was to stand in front of the big lettering myself, but unfortunately they removed it. The locals are fed up with tourists anyway, it's probably why it's now at the airport. These are the locations we are going to check out today. But as always, let's check out the hotel room first. Small, all styled to look modern, with quotes on the wall. There is even the yoga set, just no space for it in the room. Yeah, very clever. It wasn't very smart of us either to book a hotel room in the summer without air conditioning. The bathroom is also perfectly fine. Let's go to the city center, I guess. This car is following me. The city center is about 20-minute walk away from our hotel, and the best way through is via the Rijksmuseum, or however it's pronounced. My Dutch isn't that great. For me the language sounds a little bit like a mix of English and German, but this mix had a serious car accident. We are now in the garden of the Rijksmuseum, where you can try painting on the canvas for a fee. I really can recommend this place. It's a really beautiful garden to relax in. In the city, workers then pulled old bicycles out of the canal. Every year about 25,000 bicycles are fished out of the canal. Perfect situations for a few street photos. It's nice how people here enjoy the canals by driving boats around. It's really difficult to navigate in the city at first, since everything looks the same here. I mean, you have the cool houses with the incredible tall windows and water everywhere. What's also unusual at first is the Dutch openness. So many houses were open and people were sitting at the entrance or in the living rooms. So we continued walking through the streets and photographed everything that looked interesting. And oh boy, in a new city everything looks interesting. What we later found out was that the Pride Week was happening and the celebrations had reached their final day. This one is one of my favorite photos. Unfortunately, someone is walking right behind them. We arrived at the Tuschinski Theater, probably one of the most beautiful cinemas in the world. It was opened in 1921 and is considered an icon of Art Deco. Too bad I could only take one photo of the interior. I really love these oversized windows everywhere. By the way, that's a small house for the employees of the boat tours. You should always keep your eyes open. People here like to decorate their windows. What is also nice that you can see a lot of community spirit here, and it's lived out on the streets. Every city needs one of these random Chinese buildings. The plan was to head from the harbor area we are currently in to the upper end of the city center to see the ocean. The green building in the back is the Nemo Science Museum. What was interesting is that the people here often took their afternoon naps or read some books. We visited the Nemo observation platform another day. On that day we didn't even know it existed. We passed by the large office buildings, but at the end here, next to the train station, there's absolutely nothing. So definitely skip this part on your visit. The only good thing was that I took the best minimalistic photos of the trip here. I really love these two shots. This is the Amsterdam train station. We passed through to get back into the city. Here's a little montage of my disappointing face since there's nothing here. Selfie time. Phew, finally out of the stuffy train station. What I also have to say is that Amsterdam is the most multicultural city I've ever seen. And cheese everywhere. I swear to you, every 5 meters there's a new cheese store. Later we accidentally stumbled into a huge live concert. Luckily there was a clothing store right next door where we could see the whole thing from above. There were just too many people. It really looks like a Where's Waldo puzzle. If you found him, let me know in the comments. After that we were really hungry and got ourselves something truly Dutch. Just kidding, it was just a pizza. Now we are on our way back to the hotel, but not without taking a lot of pictures. In the Wonderland Park we also stumbled upon this strange dance party. So many impressions in one day. We were actually glad to be back in the hotel. I tell you now my basics on how I shoot discreetly. I personally always shoot with the camera at waist level and use the tilt up display angled upward. Because there are a few practical reasons for this. The first reason is, which probably applies to a few people, is that I'm nearly 2 meters tall, which is 6.7 in freedom units, and every shot taken from my eye level looks like drone footage. So for a well-positioned close-up shot of people, I actually have to bend down, which is obviously super noticeable and I try to avoid that. The second reason is this movement. Obviously I'm taking a picture of you gesture. I want candid photos of people and I'm already stand out too much. So this gesture would ruin the photo completely. Oh, and please don't listen to people who say a shot from waist level isn't real street photography. Shoot however you want. In the end, the result is that what matters. Oh, and one small annoyance with Fuji. When you want to turn on your camera and the display is tilted upward and pressed against your chest, I turn it on and it displays no picture. Only when you remove the camera from your chest, the picture appears. So this isn't very well thought out compared to other cameras from other brands. So my tip is tilt the camera slightly downward and then turn the camera on. And then your picture appears. And that's another reason why I always leave the camera turned on. Okay, let's move on with the next day. And just like that, we've already arrived at day 3. Today we're taking a boat ride, visit the flower market and probably experiencing the best sunset of the entire trip. But at first we're heading through Amsterdam's Central Park, the Wonderland Park. Here people jogging really early and dogs are freely playing on the lawns. We had truly beautiful light that morning. At this point we dropped off the Lark M6, which had been in need for a CLA for some time at Amsterdam Camera Repair. After that we visit a local market and enjoyed some fresh Stroopwafel at a really great price. Folks, don't buy them in the city center, they're absolutely overpriced there. Instead get them here at the market for a quarter of the price. Of course, I couldn't resist taking some street photos. Back in the city center, we head towards the Rembrandt monument. I really like how people here decorate their houses with flowers. And there he is, good old Rembrandt. Perfect spot for an afternoon nap. Opposite is the statue of the thinker. Of course, he has to wear a fancy astronaut suit. However, the pose looks more like his leg fell asleep while sitting on the toilet. Now we're heading toward the flower market. Unfortunately, it was closed yesterday. What's really nice is that there are hung dried flowers all over the ceiling. What is not so great is that they sell standardized tourist junk. It's definitely worth a visit, but better not buy seeds or bulbs here. I can imagine that it was a really great place before it became a tourist attraction. Next we're heading into the secret area in Amsterdam, where you're actually not allowed to take photos with cameras. One of the few walkable courtyards in Amsterdam. You usually only see the houses from the street side. A beautiful place. It's hard to imagine how amazing it would be to own a house here in Amsterdam. In this courtyard there are also two chapels that are almost next door to each other. The reason is one is Catholic and the other is an English church. Really silly. After that we wandered through the streets and wanted to take a boat tour. This nice guy was offering free hugs. In the end, my photo unfortunately ended up looking like a JoJo reference. Eventually, we ended up at the Anne Frank house. We actually wanted to visit the museum too, but the line was way too long. After waiting half an hour, we finally ended up on the boat. Always keep your eyes open for details. The boat was full of people from all over the world. Americans, Saudis, English and us two German potatoes. I really can recommend such a boat tour. We had a lot of fun and were able to ask all sorts of questions about the city, especially about what it's like to live here. Just look at the smiling psycho face from the girl's boat that almost hit us. On the tour they also told us why the windows and floors were so high. The short answer is taxes, of course. The houses weren't taxed based on their floor area, but on their roof, so they built as high as possible. which also means that in order to avoid using too much are built so steeply that they are basically ladders. After passing under the bridge, we come to the ugliest thing Amsterdam has to offer. And here is it, the head music theater. The people of Amsterdam love this building as much as receiving socks from their drunk aunt at Christmas. And with that, we reached the end of our boat tour. After that, we didn't have a specific destination, just continue exploring the city, taking some street shots of the people here and enjoying the low-hanging sun. It's truly incredible how many photo opportunities Amsterdam offers per square meter. I mean, here you can find everything: interesting architecture, beautiful light, fascinating places and even stranger people. We then passed by roaming feeding pigeons, always a good subject for a photo, and Holiday Santa. This is one of my favorite photos from Amsterdam, beautiful sunset and the classic bridge. I like that one too, I didn't even notice the tattooed guy walking by as he passed. And we ended up back in the front of the train station. In the end, the city center isn't as big as you might think. Yeah, don't ask me what they are doing. This guy with the hat was from a queue for Instagram fries. To not blow our budget, we ate at Walk to Walk quite a few times. It's delicious, filling and not overwhelming in price. Back at the Royal Palace on Dam Square, but without the roughly 200,000 people from yesterday. There are cities that are more beautiful in the morning and there are those that are more oriented towards evening sun. And Amsterdam is definitely an evening city. What's also totally crazy is that I ran into a viewer of my channel. He even had one of my recipes on his Fuji. Oh hello fellow Fujifilm user. And this is probably the best spot for a sunset. The houses are so beautifully lit that it was truly a pleasure to watch. And here's my dumb face as proof that I was really there. It's really great when you get to experience such a beautiful sunset in a foreign city. The atmosphere and curiosity that a new place evokes in me always reminds me why I love to travel. And Amsterdam is such a magical place that you rarely find, one that leaves an incredible impression on you. The seagulls also find their friends among other visitors. Cats are also very common here. Interesting antenna design. And this kid was even waiting for a dog to pounce on. Now we come to the focus modes of this camera. It's really important that the focus mode is always on AFS. Really. The algorithm on the AFC doesn't work well, and it especially doesn't work with the extra slow lens of this camera. I've made a whole dedicated video on this issue. I also installed the latest firmware update which addresses the performance issues, but it didn't fix anything, so please forget that the AFC is even there. The first thing I noticed on this camera is that the lens is probably the slowest in all of Fuji's lineup. That means focusing between near and far is a challenge for this. But at least there is one good solution for this problem for street photography. You have to enable
distance scale
on your camera and then pre-focus on the distance you want to photograph your subject. If you want to photograph the whole body of a person, then pre-focus to 1.5 meters. Then, when the camera tries to focus on that subject you want to photograph, the lens doesn't have to move and probably hits even better than if you have your focus on the background. Even if the camera don't want to focus in this moment, you are at least in the ballpark of the distance you want to photograph. So try to make a habit to pre-focus and your hit rate will increase dramatically. So let's move on with the next day. Today won't be quite as packed as yesterday. On day 4 we will visit the interior of the Rijksmuseum and the famous De Holland food market. It's a shame that we couldn't see the Van Gogh Museum. A tip is that you should book the tickets quite early, preferably even the day before. For the Van Gogh Museum you actually need to book 2 weeks in advance. But at this point we didn't even know we were going to Amsterdam. We really would have liked to see it. In the meantime, before we could go into the museum, we relaxed a bit in the garden next to it. The two elderly people looked really cool in front of the hot dog cart. When you enter, you first find yourself in a huge hall with a very cool construction above you. It was all less crowded than I expected, considering how strictly they control the tickets. I came up with a small project. People photographed all the artworks without rhyme or reason, just to have them. They are the greatest artworks by the best painters in the world, and the people don't look at them, they just post it on social media. I mean, what is wrong with people? I mean, in my hometown we also have museums, but there people actually look at the things instead of just photographing them. Well, at least I wanted to show that people perceive art differently, or not at all. My favorite room in the whole museum. This library was amazing. And downstairs there are actually people who read the books, so it's not just decoration. If you're in Amsterdam, definitely visit this museum. It's truly worth it. You can spend many hours here, if not an entire day. You even get really good light for great staircase photos. They even managed to bring an entire airplane into the attic. And here's the Great Hall with masterpieces of Dutch realism, Vermeer, Rembrandt and even a few Van Goghs. But let us focus back on the people for now. And in the case you're wondering, yes, I did spend a lot of time looking at all the pictures in detail and not just taking photos. And here's Night Watch, but it's currently being restored and is not easily accessible. A A real plus of the Fuji is that it's truly silent. In the museum, nobody noticed that I was photographing anything other than the pictures. This is the Vermeer corner. The painting, The Milkmaid, was really impressive. It looked so incredibly real in some places, yet so artistic. Only a true master can achieve something like that. This shot is one of my favorites. I like that it looks like a Baroque painting itself. It's a pity that there weren't even more pictures. I could have spent even more hours here. In this room there were a huge black mirror on the floor. It then continued to the basement, which is entirely themed around seafaring. In one room there was also that ceiling construction that you surely know from social media. They were just slower than I thought. I was so absorbed in architecture photography that I didn't even notice that the museum was about to close. It was around 5 PM and we were really hungry, so the Hallen was the perfect place to find really good food. It doesn't get more Amsterdam than this picture. What you have to get used to in Amsterdam is that bicycles are everywhere, and they can really crash into you if you're not careful. And God forbid you accidentally walk onto a bike lane. They get angry and aggressive very quickly. And the worst are the remaining SUV drivers here, and that's coming from someone who comes from a country full of BMW drivers. The walk from the Rijksmuseum to the hall was really long, at least I could take some cool shots along the way. Finally arrived. It took almost an hour. I was almost starving on the way. The Holland is basically a food truck festival just under a hall roof. Here you can find food from all the countries you can imagine. However, the prices were really high and the portions were really small, just like a real food truck. Nevertheless, a gourmet can certainly find 1 or 2 great meals here. My wife didn't eat anything here and I found a pulled pork, well, I wouldn't call it a burger, maybe a bun for a hefty €10. After this little disappointment, we went back into the city. My wife and I had stroopwafels that we bought at the supermarket. The sunset that day was once again incredibly beautiful. What always amazes us is how many people here leave their apartments open. And after another exhausting day, it's time to slowly head back to the hotel, because tomorrow is going to be intense again. A small highlight, however, was the shop full of mannequins. They looked totally creepy, as one of them is about to slowly turn around. Next round of tips is how to get the best focus out of this camera. I've tested all the focus methods, including the new and improved AI autofocus. At first, zone seemed like the best option, as it theoretically offers the most focus points, but zone focuses often on the background and not on the intended subject. The best setting I found is the small 3x3 grid. It offers the optimal balance between size, accuracy and speed. While smaller grids focus too slowly, the bigger grids prefer the background, so the 3x3 offers the best results. However, you first have to unlock all the focus points in the settings. increasing them from 117 to 425. Another important thing is with this camera you need to pre-focus on the ground. With the pre-focusing on the ground and the corresponding focus settings, I rarely have any problems on hitting what I want. You could probably also use manual modus and zone focus, but I don't think this camera is good for that because it only has focus by wire on this lens, so nah, I'd rather skip that. Let's move on with the next day. And just like that, we arrived at our last day in Amsterdam. However, it's not getting any less exciting. Today we are going into the botanical garden on the roof of the Nemo and we see our first windmill. However, like every day, we have to walk past the oversized bathtub. Finally, a gummy bear in a proper size. And as always, Amsterdam has some interesting things in store that happens along the way. I told you, you probably know the red double-decker buses in England. But have you ever seen the double-decker carriages in Amsterdam? Probably not. If that wasn't a pleasant surprise. Okay, let's move on. By the way, the houseboats are sometimes more expensive than the houses here. Crazy, right? Did you know that there are about 1,200 bridges in Amsterdam city center? That makes Amsterdam second behind Hamburg with 2,500 bridges. And it costs about 30 million euros a year to repair and maintain these bridges. After a few hedge-cutting seniors, we reach our destination. The entrance wasn't exciting, but the large greenhouse was definitely better. Look at how many amazing jungle plants grow here, and especially how big they are. I have never seen such large palms and strelentias before. Do they even grow that large in nature, or is it just too much fertilizer here? The roof of the building is about 12 meters or 39 feet, and the plant just about fits underneath it. And there was also a huge specimen of my favorite weed, a monstera. After a few days full of experiences, you can really relax here. But it's about to get more exciting than just a few plants, as they also have a butterfly house. If you're into plants or just want to relax, I can really recommend a visit here. Now we are in the butterfly house. There is really a lot going on here and you have to be careful where you walk. I have no idea about the species here, but they have a few different types, all of which are medium sized, so no muffras or anything like that. It was really difficult to photograph those flappy boys with a 35mm focal length, as they always flew off whenever I got too close. However, you can definitely get some cool shots here. This one was even transparent. This is the biggest rhubarb I've ever seen. My wife here for size comparison. They're actually building a new greenhouse there, so it will be even more interesting in the future. Back in the city we happened to pass by a flea market. They had a few cameras, but nothing really interesting. Now we're heading to the new Science Center roof. From there you can overlook all of Amsterdam. But before that, we had some delicious Asian teriyaki chicken with rice. And the seagull wanted some of it too. To reach our destination, we had to pass through the harbor district, with many boats converted into apartments. I walked down the longest pier in all of Amsterdam only to end up photographing a yellow hose in the hand. But now we're finally here. The black building on the right, which cost a modest 500 million euros, is the Booking.com tower. That's where all your money ends up when you're booking a trip. On the Nemo, there is a large terrace area where you can find a cafe and children can play with water features. And there's also a view of a pirate ship up there. The interior of the ship can be seen at the Maritime Museum, but unfortunately we were already too late. From there we spotted a windmill in the distance and we thought we walk over there to it. Unfortunately, it was a whole hour away. Along the way there were again many houseboat constructions to see. This is our first windmill we've seen here. It's already a preview of tomorrow. And oh boy, tomorrow will be really crazy. On our way back, we passed by this crane in a residential area. And again, old people cutting their hedges. We also encountered 2 of the 80 mounted police officers here in Amsterdam. I hope they didn't feel followed as we passed by them a few times. And there they are again. I even caught a horse kiss. It's starting to get a bit obvious, isn't it? Luckily, we weren't arrested. Afterward, we found this incredible plant-filled sidewalk. Something like that would be never possible here in conservative Germany. Check this out, it's a whole garden center right in the middle of nowhere. And another creepy bust. Since it was our last day here, I totally went wild and photographed everything that came my way. These 2 looked amazing. I can also say, if you have an X100, get yourself a good lens hood. Otherwise the stray light will ruin a few of your photos. But unfortunately, even the most beautiful visit has come to an end. So I went into overdrive and photographed as many people as I could. But get ready for tomorrow. We are visiting the most Dutch thing that the Netherlands has to offer. The next part is about what shutter speeds I use with moving and static objects. The new 40 megapixel sensor on the X100VI requires a minimum of 1/1000th of a second for constant sharp images. This is especially important if you are walking and want to photograph people moving towards you. So that means I'm using
shutter priority,
auto ISO and a minimum of 1/1000th of a second. For static objects I use a minimum shutter speed of 1/125th of a second at a day and 1/15th of a second at night thanks to the IBIS. These settings ensure the cleanest ISO settings without manually adjusting anything, so you can do all this with one hand. And now I tell you why I use aperture on auto. which is probably not everyone's favorite setting. Because of the dynamic range extension in the settings for my recipe, I need a base ISO of 500. And because of this, I have to probably always change the aperture setting to don't overexpose my images. And to avoid changing the settings all the time between sunlit and shadows, I just leave it at auto. While you lose some control of the depth of field, you significantly get more ease of use out of this. And it would be great if Fuji could finally implement an option to prioritize closed apertures. Now let's move on with the next day. Today we are visiting what's probably the most Dutch little village that ever existed. It looks like a daydream in green. But I don't want to reveal too much yet, because it's truly beautiful. Windmill foreshadowing. Here we are at the entrance of the famous village of Zaanse Schans. Well, did I promise too much? But it gets even better. Such lovely little houses. I'm afraid I have to disappoint you, but this place was specially built in 1916 as an open-air museum to showcase the windmill culture. So it's not an old village, but a newly built one. No matter what is photographed here, it looks incredible, awesome and cute in a Dutch way. In ease of use. It looks so calming watching that relaxed sheep grazing here. This picture is one of my favorites. It looks straight up out of an AI image generator. Honestly, I don't mind whether it's not a real village or not. I just love it here. If you want to visit Zaanse Schans, you do have to get here fairly early. The tourists flood in from noon onwards and you end up with too many people in the pictures. I really like this too. The light is just perfect. After we took the main path around the houses, we slowly walked towards the windmills. But first we had to go through a cheese shop. I would really be cautious about buying overpriced regular cheese here. You can find it much cheaper in the supermarket. The windmills are really much bigger than expected. In fact, these windmills aren't just decorative. Each of these mills has a different function. Some windmills grind seeds, like flax seeds and walnuts, to produce oil. These mills are also known as oil mills. There is also a mill that processes cacao beans and produces chocolate. Another mill is responsible for the production of mustard. This windmill is traditionally used for pounding wood to process it for furniture and construction industries. And there are mills that were used for paper production. So the power of a windmill can be used quite versatilely. After all the walking around, we wanted to take a short break and eat some stroopwafels. The ducks were quite interested too. One of the windmills is currently being repaired, which is why it doesn't have a head. We slowly made our way back towards the car. Next up is a visit to the beach. On the way back, we stopped by one of the houses that one sells sweets. They furnished it with some old furniture, but surely no one has lived here. It was still interesting to be inside one of the houses. The device in the corner seemed to be an old cookie machine. Luckily, we were already on our way out before the tourists overwhelmed us. I actually wanted to go to Zandvoort, but it was too far from our location. So we just drove towards the sea and ended up here. I really can't pronounce it, but it's a seaside town with a hotel nearby. I haven't been to the sea in a long time, and this day was perfect for it. With the beautiful white sand beach, it's hard to believe you're in the Netherlands. If only there were some palm trees, you would feel like you were in the Bahamas. There was also a small surf group here, and at the entrance you could, but we are not here to do sports, just to dip our feet in the water and take a little walk in the sand. And don't forget to put on your filter on your X100, otherwise you will get sand in the lens and you will have to throw the thing in the trash. The tent looks really ridiculous, honestly. Oh, a jellyfish. I've never seen one live before. You know you had enough of the beach when you have sand in every layer of clothing. After a relaxing sea trip, we are heading towards Utrecht, another well-known city with a completely different charm compared to Amsterdam. But first, some stroopwafels. Stroopwafels. After a short drive, we are in Utrecht and checking out the city center. We stayed at Bad Huis, an old converted bathhouse it seems. At least the room had an air conditioner again. It was spacious, but it had no view, and it was right in the middle of the city. Bathroom check, still no vintage toilet. However, there was an oversized mirror that stretched across the entire width. And a gigantic skylight that really heated up the room. Another special feature is that there is a very good restaurant on the ground floor. However, we didn't eat there. The dishes were too fancy for my wife. We leave the room behind us and head towards the city center. Utrecht has an impressive Gothic bell tower that you can see from everywhere. In the center, there are the usual beautiful Dutch houses again. Here the houses are one floor higher than in Amsterdam. I'll explain later why. The city isn't even close to being as crowded as Amsterdam. So if you want to experience more of the everyday Dutch life, this city is a better place to visit. Of course, the typical beer shouldn't be missed either. Nice layering with some unexpected elements. That's how I like street photography. Here you can also see some smaller houses, which you don't really find in Amsterdam. What's also the case here is that people cruise around in their little boats, enjoying the weather. The reason they were built differently in Utrecht is that they stored their goods in the basement, which was closer to the water. The basement was also connected to the ground floor where the goods were sold. Here they had the advantage of being able to build differently since the underground wasn't marshland. This combination gives Utrecht its own distinctive look. I might say something controversial for the locals, but I prefer the street vibe of Amsterdam. Here, the width of the river really divides the city. Nevertheless, I think the spot here is the most beautiful place in Utrecht. And of course, everywhere the flying fry eaters. Everywhere in the lower area, there are restaurants filled with crowds of people, creating a great atmosphere. So if you ever pass through Utrecht, be sure to take a short break and at least have a quick look at the city center. I think you won't regret it. And as I already mentioned, you can usually see the bell tower from almost everywhere. I also have an important tip. If you are traveling by car, be careful where you park. The system is complicated and the parking authority's website doesn't work properly and is only in Dutch. This system almost ruined our entire evening because we didn't want to get an expensive parking ticket. The people of Utrecht want to keep tourist cars out of the city center and provide special parking garages for this purpose. After a beautiful sunset, we are heading back to the hotel. As mentioned, park a ticket and all. But first, the unhealthiest dinner you can have. The next tip is about the OVF of this camera. The OVF was one of the main reasons I bought this camera, but I haven't used it as much, because of following reasons. In fast-paced situations, the narrower field of view of the EVFs allows me to compose simply faster. But there are also some technical reasons why I don't use the OVF as much. The water level and the 3x3 grid doesn't move with the parallax correction. And the OVF limits also the size of your focus patch, which is unfortunately sometimes not the right size. If I use the VCL adapter, I don't have frame lines at all. What? And if you have the little focus patch in the right corner, the camera focuses really slow. I mean, Fuji, this is the 6th version. Who thought it is okay to leave it that way? Really. Nonetheless, if I have more time, I always use the OVF because it's simply more fun. But you have to consider that is not always the right time for an OVF. And now we move to the next day. And now we've reached the last day and are back in good old ugly Germany. We take a quick look around the city center of Münster, visiting a museum that has an exhibition by Capa, one of the founding members of Magnum. Look at my sad face that I have to leave the Netherlands. On Google Maps, Münster looked quite charming. But after being in Amsterdam, everything feels cramped, disproportionate and above all, very boring. Just look at the square, there's absolutely no one here. The door was open, so we quickly went into the cathedral. Typical Münster decoration, impaled horse heads, yeah. The city definitely has a few beautiful old buildings to offer. Before we went into the museum, we had some carbonara and Flammkuchen. Capa was one of the founding members of Magnum and an absolute badass war photographer. But more on that in a moment. I took the opportunity during my time in the museum to do some black and white photography again. Here people are standing in front of the falling soldier, an iconic image by Capa that he took 1936. He captured the moment when the soldier was shot. I really recommend delving into Capa's work. He was a very interesting person, for sure. Of course, it had to start raining, as if it weren't enough that it's already ugly here. We actually planned to stay another night here in Münster, but after seeing how it is here, we decided to head home instead. But I put it this way, this is still the nicer part of the city. I don't need to show you the rest of the city with its 70s brutalism charm. That means thank you for sticking with me through these 6 days.